What's up, everyone? Today I'm going to take this Rocky Mountain Juniper that I've had for a couple of years and see if I can graft it with Kishu foliage. This is a collected Rocky Mountain Juniper that I purchased from a guy in Wyoming, and I haven't done much to it other than repot it out of a large box into this round container. And it's only about 12 inches tall, but it has like a nice trunk with some old deadwood on it, as you would expect from a Yamadori. But I don't think that the foliage type that's on it right now is going to be really conducive to creating a small tree and then maintaining it over a long period. And so with that in mind, I am going to try to put some Kishu grafts on here. Now, Kishu is definitely one of my favorite foliage types, but I could also use Itoigawa or any of a number of other kind of similar cultivars of Shimpaku. In order to start, what I want to do first is to just get in here and kind of explore what the lifeline looks like. So I've left up to this point most of the old bark on the trunk, which looks pretty cool, but I just don't know that I'm going to be able to preserve all of it. And my goal for this tree is, even though it's about 12 inches tall right now, I really want to make it into a shohin size, which would come in at about that high. And as you can see, most of the foliage is coming out from points of origin that are too high on the trunk in order to make it a shohin. After the grafts are taken, are successful, what I would do then is grow out the graft for a year or two while cutting back some of this foliage and transitioning the tree from one to another. Now, as you may know, junipers have lifelines, especially when they're old like this. And so I have to find a good lifeline in order to place the graft. If I measure up from the rim of the pot to about 5 inches, that's probably the ideal spot for me to put a graft, and that's because if I put it any higher, I won't have space to create a crown. So if I want to stay under 8 inches, then I need to put the graft lower. And so I'm looking at this section of the trunk as the ideal place to put the graft. And I have, you can see here that there's various lifelines that are sort of breaking out and going in different directions. So I really like this particular feature on the tree. I think it, conveys a lot of age, but unfortunately it's above where I could put the grafts and have them be useful. So I'm going to come down in here. I'll probably just leave this alone. And I'm going to go ahead and put a couple of grafts over on this lifeline as well. All right, so this is my Kishu that I'm going to use, and because I know that I propagated all my Kishu from the same exact clonal stock, I'm not too concerned if I need to find scions from another tree that I have. So this one looks like it has a couple, maybe more that I can use. I'm removing some of the foliage to give myself space, but also to reduce the transpirational stress on the scion. So I've got a couple prepped there. Those two are from Strong Whips. This one is sort of a medium strength. It's got a nice tip on it here. I'm going to pinch off the tip just to slow it down a little bit while it's going through the grafting process. And 5. So maybe I'll try to do 5 grafts. All right, so I've touched up the edge of my grafting knife in preparation for doing this grafting. And if you don't have your own sharpening stones, that might be a good thing to consider getting. And this edge should feel as sharp as you've ever felt something be. So if you run your finger over it, because you can't actually see the edge, if you run your finger over it and it feels very like it hits each one of the ridges on your fingerprint, that's sort of the feeling that you're after. If it feels like it's rounded or doesn't have a nice sharp edge, then you should touch it up on a water stone or with a similar type of sharpening mechanism. I'm using a soft piece of wood here underneath. It is just a scrap of redwood, which is nice and soft. And that's because I don't want the edge of the grafting knife to hit anything that could cause it to get dull. And to cut the end of the scion, what I'm going to do is start back here and having the edge of the blade be exactly 90 degrees from the length of the scion here, and I'm going to kind of make a long shallow cut across the end, kind of slanting it down like to create a wedge, and you can make a couple passes if you want. And now I have one side where the cambium is exposed along that edge. Flip it over, do the same thing but a little bit shorter on the other side. So I've got a long side and a short side, and you want to make sure that this edge is relatively square. So I'm going to try to put one graft here and then another graft relatively above it. I'm going to put the top one in first because once I put it in, I won't be able, if I put the lower one in first, then I wouldn't be able to get to this one as easily. And I'm cutting down into the wood, through the cambium and into the wood, and you see I've just let go of the grafting knife and it'll stay there without me holding on to it. All right, I'm going to take the long end, or the long side of the scion that I made, and I'm going to put it on the inside. And as I put this in here, what I'm trying to do is to match up the cambium layer of the scion with the cambium layer of the cut that I've just made. And so you want to elongate that junction as much as possible along the edge of the scion. And each one of them, because the radius of the cuts are different, is basically a horseshoe shaped cross section of the cambium. But because the horseshoe shapes are different sizes, you can only usually match up one, unless what you're grafting onto is exactly the same size as the scion that you're putting in. On the other side, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to stack a couple of them, one in here and one further down here. Now that I have these in, I am using this plastic rope, essentially, which I actually bought at a convenience store in Japan. But you can use regular green grafting tape or anything else that you want, because basically what I'm trying to do here is just to press the cut portion of the cambium in the Rocky Mountain Juniper firmly against the scion inside the cut that I made. Now that I have the grafts tied at the base, that will help them not move as I go through the next step here. And I'm going to start with the top one. I'm going to use a piece of wire to just sort of move all of the existing foliage out of the way while I do this tying process. All right, and I'm going to slip the bag down over the scion to make kind of like a little mini greenhouse. This can be a little bit fiddly if you have things in the way. but I'm trying to get the base of the bag all the way down to, or the opening of the bag all the way down to the base of the scion. So I've tied the base of the bag closed with the sphagnum here at the top and the scion inside. All right, I've got all 4 grafts on there, and the last thing I'm going to do in preparation for just putting this back outside for the tree to grow is to cover the ones that are exposed to the sun a little bit. Now, I don't care about the sphagnum moss being exposed to the sun, so I've got a little bit of tape here, and I'm just going to kind of put that almost like a little tent over the scion to try to give it a little bit of relief from any direct sunlight. I have to say this is not a pretty process, but it will make a pretty tree. If you have experience with grafting and you want to correct any mistakes that I made during this video, feel free to leave a comment below. Thanks everyone for watching. I hope you learned something from that. We'll see you next time.